Assalamualaikum everyone, I'm Muqaddas Education Wali and I'm a student in Rehan School Foundation course batch 2. Today I'll be asking questions from Maya based on the topic of Earth, the history of our home in a word. So let's get started.
Hi, what's
Hi,
going on?
so I'm going to ask you a question based on Earth, the history of our home in a word. Can I start?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
So the first question is, what is Earth and why is it called our home planet?
Yeah, Earth is the third planet from the sun in our solar system. It's this rocky sphere, mostly water, where life just happened to take hold somehow. It's the only place we know of with liquid water on the surface, which is pretty crucial for all the living things around here. As for why it's called home, I think that's pretty fundamental. It's where humans evolved, where we've built all our civilizations, where we experience everything. It's literally everything we know. Um, Pretty simple reason, really.
How old is Earth estimated to be?
Scientists estimate Earth is about 4.54 billion years old. They figure that out by dating meteorites. Those are basically leftovers from the solar system's formation. Plus, they've got samples from Earth's own rocks and have mapped geologic history over time. So it's a combination of cosmic debris and earthly evidence. The planet started as a bunch of dust and gas circling the sun, slowly building up over millions of years until you get what we have today.
So, how was Earth formed in the early solar system?
Okay, so picture this: a giant cloud of gas and dust floating around billions of years ago. Gravity started pulling it all together, making it spin faster and faster. Most of this stuff ended up in the middle, forming the sun. But there was some material left, swirling around. That's where Earth came in. Tiny dust particles collided, sticking together to form pebbles, then rocks, then bigger and bigger chunks called planetesimals. These kept crashing into each other, growing through these collisions over millions of years. The early Earth got incredibly hot, melting everything inside. Over time, heavier stuff like iron sunk to the core, and lighter materials formed the mantle and crust. And there was a big collision with another planet. That blasted off stuff, which eventually became the moon. It was chaotic for a long time. Constant bombardment from space debris, volcanic eruptions, crazy amounts of radiation. But eventually, things calmed down enough for water to condense from steam and form oceans, which would later evolve. It's wild to think about when you break it down.
So, what were the early conditions on Earth like?
The early Earth was basically hellish compared to what we have now. Picture this: constant volcanic eruptions, endless meteor impacts, and no protective atmosphere to speak of, just intense radiation hitting the surface. The air was probably mostly filled with volcanic gases like carbon dioxide and nitrogen, but almost no oxygen. So, no breathable air for humans. The surface was scorching hot from the impacts and volcanic activity, and water would have been steam in the atmosphere. The oceans were probably these hot, acidic soups. Not exactly relaxing. It wasn't until Earth cooled down enough and got that protective atmosphere that conditions became possible for life to take hold. But honestly, it took a really long time for Earth to calm down enough for life to even get a foothold.
So, why is Earth the only known planet that supports life?
That's the big question, isn't it? Honestly, we don't know for sure yet, but we think it's a combination of factors. Earth has this unique combination of liquid water, a stable atmosphere, the right distance from the sun for temperatures to support life, and a magnetic field that protects us from harmful radiation. It's like winning the cosmic lottery. We've found evidence of water on other planets, Mars, for example, and the building blocks of life elsewhere, but nothing's come close to having all the right conditions in one place. The sweet spot for liquid water is surprisingly narrow, too close to the sun, and it boils away too far and it freezes solid. Earth just happens to be in that perfect zone. It's either we haven't looked hard enough elsewhere, or Earth really is something special. The search continues, though.
What are the main eras in Earth's geological history?
Okay, so Earth's history is broken down into these big chunks called eons, then eras and periods. But here's the really rough breakdown of major events, almost like chapters in a crazy long book. First, there's the Hadean eon, which is basically the planet. Then comes the Archean. That's when the very first simple life forms appeared, likely in the oceans. Then you've got the Proterozoic, more complex cells evolve, like the ancestors of plants and animals. The Phanerozoic is the last half billion years or so. That's when things really get dramatic. You've got the Cambrian explosion, where complex animal life just seems to appear out of nowhere. Massive extinction events, like one that wiped out the dinosaurs, periods of intense volcanism, continental drift, reshaping the planet, ice ages, and eventually the evolution of humans. Basically, Earth's been through periods of intense turmoil and relative calm, with life constantly adapting and evolving to survive. Each era represents huge changes in climate, geography, and what kinds of life were around.
What happened during the Precambrian period?
The Precambrian period, honestly, is like the Earth's super long and mysterious childhood. It covers about 88% of Earth's history from when it formed around 4.5 billion years ago until about 541 million years ago. What makes it tricky is we don't have a ton of clear evidence of what was happening back then. Fossils are rare. The rocks have been mashed and reformed over time. But what we do know is that it saw the origins of life itself. Single-celled organisms, bacteria and archaea, were the first inhabitants. Slowly, these cells started working together, forming the very first multicellular life in the later Precambrian period. Oxygen levels started building up in the atmosphere during this time thanks to these early life forms. This is actually called the Great Oxidation Event. That was huge because that oxygen actually created the ozone layer that blocks out radiation and allowed for more complex life to evolve. Toward the end of the Precambrian, you get things like the first jellyfish, and more complex organisms start appearing, but these events are hard to pin down. Pretty slow build up to the explosion of diversity that happens next, which most scientists mark as the start of the Cambrian period.
So, how did continents form and move over time? Form and move over time.
All right, so this is about plate tectonics. The Earth's outer shell isn't one solid piece. It's broken into these massive puzzle pieces called tectonic plates. These plates float on the Earth's semi-molten mantle, and they're constantly moving really slowly, about 2 to 10 centimeters a year, basically the speed your fingernails grow. What drives this? Heat from Earth's core creates convection currents in the mantle, kind of like how water boils in a pot. These currents push and pull the plates. Where plates collide, you get mountain building, like the Himalayas formed when India crashed into Asia. Where they pull apart, you get rift valleys or new crust forming at mid-ocean ridges. They're also grinding past each other at fault lines like the San Andreas, which creates earthquakes. Now think way back. Earth's continents weren't always where they are now. They've been bumping around and reconnecting like huge land masses over billions of years. Like all the continents used to be connected into this supercontinent called Pangea, but it broke apart gradually to where they are today. Kengians aren't permanently fixed locations. They're on these giant conveyor belts floating around at an almost imperceptible pace.
What is tectonics and why is it important?
Plate tectonics is essentially the theory that Earth's outer shell is broken into these giant puzzle pieces called plates that are constantly moving. Imagine cracking the shell of a hard boiled egg. That's basically what we're dealing with, but these cracks are hundreds of miles deep. They're moving because of heat from the Earth's core, creating currents that push and pull them. It's important because this is how continents move around. Mountains get built, volcanoes form, and earthquakes happen. Without plate tectonics, we wouldn't have land as we know it, continents wouldn't be in their current shapes, and ocean basins wouldn't form. It also has a huge impact on climate because plate movement affects ocean currents in gas distribution. Basically, it's one of the key reasons we can have life. The cycling of materials between Earth's interior and atmosphere relies on plate tectonics, too. Nutrients are recycled this way, which keeps the planet functioning.
How do volcanoes and earthquakes shape Earth?
Volcanoes and earthquakes are basically two sides of the same coin when it comes to shaping Earth. Earthquakes, they're caused by the movement along fault lines where those tectonic plates get stuck, then suddenly slip. That release of energy sends out seismic waves that shake the ground. Earthquakes can split the land, create hills, or trigger landslides, so they literally reshape landscapes. Then you've got volcanoes that form when molten rock rises from inside the earth through weaknesses in the crust. Lava flows can change the land's surface, sometimes slowly building up volcanic mountains or islands over time. Volcanic eruptions also release ash and gases that create new landforms or even affect climate by blocking sunlight. Both are like the planet's way of venting pressure and slowly carving out its form. Earthquakes create instant, dramatic changes, while volcanoes are more of a gradual, reshaping process. Both constantly recycle materials from Earth's interior back to the surface.
How did life first appear on Earth?
That's the $1 million question. Honestly, there's no one single answer, but the leading theory is around chemistry and hydrothermal vents. These are cracks on the ocean floor that release chemicals from Earth's interior into the water. These vents offer the perfect conditions: energy from heat, minerals, and protection from UV radiation. Scientists think the first life forms were probably single celled organisms that could survive in these extreme conditions, and they used chemicals from the vents as energy sources instead of sunlight. Basically, there were chemical reactions happening near these vents that eventually produced complex molecules like proteins and RNA. Then somehow those molecules formed into cell membranes, which started to replicate themselves. Another hypothesis is RNA world, where RNA acted as the genetic material and catalyst, basically everything all in one molecule that could replicate and evolve. It wasn't a quick event, though. It likely took hundreds of millions of years of small, incremental steps from simple chemicals to the first basic form of life. There are still lots of puzzles, but scientists are constantly piecing together new evidence.
What were the earliest living organisms?
The earliest life forms were almost certainly single celled organisms. We're talking about prokaryotes. These cells are super simple compared to the ones we have now. They lack a nucleus and other complex internal structures. The main types were likely something like early bacteria and archaea, living in harsh environments like hydrothermal vents or extreme salt water. Some scientists think early microbes developed the ability to do chemosynthesis. They could get energy from chemical reactions rather than sunlight because the early Earth had a lot of harsh UV radiation from the sun. They were anaerobic, meaning they didn't need oxygen, which was very scarce back then. Scientists have found fossilized microscopic filaments called stromatolites that date back billions of years, formed by colonies of these simple microbes. So basically, Earth started with tiny, resilient cells that barely resemble anything we see today.
So, how did photosynthesis change Earth's atmosphere?
So, imagine early Earth had hardly any oxygen in its atmosphere, mostly just volcanic gases like carbon dioxide and methane. Then these early microbes called cyanobacteria figured out photosynthesis. That's the process where they use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to make energy, but released oxygen as a byproduct. At first, this oxygen didn't really matter much because it was consumed by the iron and rocks that littered the oceans. Over millions and millions of years, though, the oxygen built up. This is known as the Great Oxidation Event. As oxygen levels increased, it dramatically changed things. It wiped out most of the anaerobic life that existed back then, but paved the way for organisms that could thrive in oxygen rich environments. This oxygen also reacted with methane in the atmosphere, forming lots of CO2, which caused a global cooling event, leading to the first ever ice ages. Importantly, oxygen buildup led to formation of ozone layer in upper atmosphere, so then life could exist on land without getting destroyed by UV radiation. It was a huge planet-altering shift triggered by life.
Why was oxygen important for complex life to evolve?
So oxygen is like the key ingredient for unlocking energy. Early life that didn't need oxygen was limited because that process yielded very little energy. Oxygen allowed for a much more efficient form of energy production. This is called aerobic respiration, and it lets organisms create so much more energy from food. The more energy life had, the more complex cells could become and start doing bigger things like building bigger bodies. Oxygen also led to formation of the ozone layer, the layer of the atmosphere that absorbs most of the UV radiation from the sun. Without it, DNA would get damaged all the time and complex life would not have a foothold. So, oxygen wasn't just important for making life more energetic, it actually made multicellular life possible. It was basically the fuel for the big jump from simple single celled organisms to the crazy diverse forms of life we have today.
How did marine life evolve into land organisms?
I'm not sure I caught that clearly. Did you say something about pollen and marine life evolving onto land? If so, could you repeat that part about pollen? I think I may have missed it.
How did marine life evolve into land organisms?
Okay, so picture this. In the early days, life was all in the water. Then certain types of fish started developing features that eventually allowed them to venture onto land. Some had these strong, fleshy fins that could support their weight for short periods, like the lobe-finned fish, essentially early ancestors of all four-limbed animals. These fins could be used to lift their bodies in shallow waters or drag themselves across land during very low tides. Then, over time, those fins started evolving into limbs with joints, like the foundations for legs and arms. They also needed ways to breathe air, so lungs developed from swim bladders. Water and fish helped to control buoyancy in water, but those had to turn into lungs. Of course, there are other challenges. Animals also had to regulate body temperature and protect themselves from drying out a new environment. Early amphibians, they retained ties to water because their eggs needed it to stay moist, but eventually amniotic eggs helped animals reproduce entirely on land. This was a very gradual process over millions of years.
What major climate changes has Earth experienced?
Earth's climate history is wild. It's been through massive swings. Starting billions of years ago, there were periods of snowball Earth when ice sheets covered basically the entire planet. Then warmer periods caused ice sheets to melt and sea levels to rise. We had this period called the Carboniferous. Huge tropical rainforests thrive, creating lots of oxygen, and then ice ages again during the Permian and Quaternary periods. During each ice age, a lot of water got locked up in glaciers, which caused global temperatures to plummet and ecosystems had to adapt or move. Then naturally, you have the interglacial periods between ice ages. That's when things warmed up again. Throughout Earth's history, there's been periods of intense greenhouse gases causing warming, volcanic eruptions, releasing cooling aerosols, changes in Earth's orbit, altering sunlight distribution. And now, of course, we have the current climate change happening at breakneck speed, largely due to human activity, which is unprecedented compared to historical changes. Climate shifts aren't usually instant, though. They unfold over thousands or millions of years, with life slowly adjusting to new conditions.
What caused the ice ages?
Did you say something about the ice ages? What were you asking specifically about them?
What caused the ice ages?
There's actually several different factors that kickstart ice ages. The biggest player is changes in Earth's orbit, what we call Milankovitch cycles. Earth's orbit isn't perfectly circular, and the angle of Earth's tilt changes over tens of thousands of years. Those subtle shifts affect how sunlight hits different parts of the planet, cooling some regions and triggering ice growth. Then you've got tectonic activity. Movements in land masses influence ocean currents and the distribution of heat around Earth. Volcanic eruptions can also contribute initially by releasing aerosols that block sunlight, but in the long run, they can influence greenhouse gas composition. But honestly, most scientists agree that the real trigger is these changes to Earth's orbital patterns. And once ice sheets start forming, they reflect more sunlight and the effects become self reinforcing. It's not just one single cause, though, it's really a combination of orbital patterns, geography, and atmosphere.
How do natural events influence Earth's environment?
Natural events have always been the shapers of Earth's environment, before humans were around influencing it as much as we do now. Volcanic eruptions, these change climates both short term by blocking sunlight and long term through releasing greenhouse gases. Meteor impacts, those cause immediate devastation, but they can drastically change the climate through dust clouds or triggering tsunamis. Earthquakes, they can create new landforms, affect waterways, and trigger landslides. Changes to Earth's orbit, as we talked about with Milankovitch cycles, they cause ice ages or interglacial periods. Also, forest fires, they reset vegetation patterns and affect local climates. And solar activity, variations in the sun's energy output influence global temperatures too. Over very long timelines, continental drift changes ocean currents. The point is, natural systems are all interconnected and change, sometimes gradually, sometimes really dramatically, but that constant flux is just part of Earth's environment.
What role do oceans play in regulating climate?
Oceans are absolutely huge in regulating climate. They act like this giant heat reservoir, absorbing sunlight and storing way more heat than the atmosphere can. This heat then gets circulated around the globe through ocean currents like the Gulf Stream, which delivers warmth all the way up to Western Europe. The oceans also soak up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, acting like a carbon sink. When it comes to water evaporation, it creates clouds that reflect sunlight back into space that actually cools the planet. Finally, seawater's ability to absorb a ton of extra heat from the atmosphere makes daily and yearly weather changes less intense. Without oceans, Earth would be way more extreme in temperatures and weather. They help distribute heat and absorb CO2, so the planet is pretty habitable.
How have ecosystems changed through time?
Ecosystems have constantly evolved since life began. In the early days, simple marine ecosystems dominated with algae and bacteria. Then, around 540 million years ago, we got the Cambrian explosion, where many different forms of multicellular life emerged pretty quickly. Around 450 million years ago, plant life moved onto land, leading to the growth of early forests and eventually coal formations. Then there was the Carboniferous period, where forests really expanded, helping to create lots of oxygen and contributing to the first flying insects. Once the age of dinosaurs started, ecosystems went more complicated, with dinosaurs and more diverse plant life in warmer, wetter environments. After dinosaurs went extinct, mammals diversified, leading to the ecosystems we know today, like rainforests, grasslands, and deserts. And even those have changed. The biggest changes are during mass extinction events, when huge parts of the ecosystem get wiped out and new ones emerge. What's happening today because of humans, that's a rapid change to ecosystems. But the fact is, ecosystems are always changing and adapting to whatever comes their way.
When did humans first appear on Earth?
Our direct ancestors, modern humans, that's Homo sapiens, first emerged in Africa about 300,000 years ago. But it's not like we just poofed into existence, fully formed. It was a gradual evolution, starting with earlier hominins like Homo habilis and Homo erectus, who appeared millions of years ago. Those earlier hominins didn't look quite like us, smaller brains, different body structures, but they were setting the stage. So the whole human story has been ongoing for millions of years, but modern humans specifically have only been around for around 300,000 years compared to Earth's 4.5 billion year lifespan. We're a really, really recent arrival.
How have humans changed the Earth's environment?
Humans have become such a huge geological force, often called the Anthropocene, the age of humans. Before modern times, our impact was small, but since agriculture began around 10,000 years ago, we started to clear forests to grow food, which changed landscapes and affected climate. Industrial revolution ramped that up dramatically, though. Burning fossil fuels changed carbon levels in atmosphere, increasing greenhouse effect and causing climate change. Habitat destruction from agriculture and urbanization has led to major biodiversity loss, and pollution from industry, agriculture, and plastics has impacted ecosystems across the planet. Overfishing and climate change have impacted oceanic ecosystems too. It's significant because humans are capable of making changes that happen really quickly on geological timescales, whereas natural processes happen much slower. Our changes are still happening now, so the environmental impact continues to grow as population increases.
Okay, so thank you so much for answering my questions. Bye.
No problem. Happy to help. Bye.